Muy todos chicos, chicas, reyes, reinas, bienvenidos a un nuevo por el canal. Hoy creo que finalizamos la misión legendaria de Lyney, ¿vale? En el episodio anterior fue una cosa muy rara, estuvimos viendo el espectáculo de Lyney y resulta que Lyney dijo que el fantasma comadreja es ella, la esposa del difunto Cesar, que antes era mago. Un muerto ahora mismo. A ver qué está pasando. Que se hace más incómodo.
Dear me, this is awkward, isn't it? And unfortunately, I'm all out of gadgets, so I'm afraid I can't do any tricks to liven up the mood. This is a big mistake for a magician to make, but thankfully, I do have a backup plan. Now, who wants to hear a story?
Lyney? Don't we have more important things to address right now? Lynette accused Gemma of being the real Phantom Weasel a moment ago. Oh, what the heck's going on?
All in good time. Magicians are good at guessing what people are thinking. I know the questions you want to ask. And as it happens, the story I'm about to tell might answer a few of them.
Really? Well then, let's hear it! Paimon's dying of curiosity here!
Let's go back to the very beginning. A decade ago, when the Phantom Weasel was terrorizing the court of Fontaine. She never missed a target, never left a trace, and no treasure was safe from her thieving hands. But as her infamy grew, so did the readiness of the police, and her opportunities to act became ever fewer. Every day she ran the risk of being exposed for who she was. Of course, she could not simply take this lying down, and before long she found her ticket to freedom. She would create a scapegoat, a false weasel to close the chapter on her behalf. After weighing her options, she set her sights on a renowned magician, Cesar. After all, magic and theft shared enough similarities for people to buy the story when the truth came out.
So then what?
Being the master deceiver she was, the weasel easily earned Caesar's trust. Now, all that remained was to frame him for her countless crimes. But as she was considering how to make her move, she noticed Caesar's aggrieved pupil, and a new thought entered her mind. Maybe I don't need to get my hands dirty after all. At her encouragement, Lorenzo tampered with Caesar's magic box, causing him to fall to his death. Afterwards, Lorenzo seized his master's property, and the weasel set about tarnishing Caesar's reputation. Two co-conspirators committed the perfect crime.
I've got to hand it to you. You're both exceptional storytellers. It's enough to make even me wonder whether there was really another mastermind behind all this, pulling the strings. But I just have one question. You seem to think that I am the villain in this tale. What's brought this on, Lyney? Is it something that Lorenzo said?
Don't worry, Lorenzo said nothing at all. But I never believed that he was the weasel, and in fact, my investigation only made me more certain of that. He was too forthcoming with his confession, as if there was something else he was trying to hide.
How disappointing. So you'd sooner trust Lorenzo than me? Even without a shred of evidence?
A magician is an expert at playing the audience to get the result they want. And I have no doubt that you, Gemma, are equally talented in this regard.
Pero nada.
With a little help from Lorenzo, you put on a very convincing performance. The lovesick fiancé, whose devotion to her betrothed is unshakable, even under threats of violence. Caesar was maligned and hated by all for 10 years, but you? Everyone sympathized with your plight. Who would suspect for 1 second that the lovely young lady always seen weeping in front of Caesar's grave was actually the mastermind behind his demise? No, not that poor lady. Perish the thought.
Wait, so you mean the whole intimidation thing was just a hoax? Gemma and Lorenzo were both in on it? But why would Lorenzo agree
Yes, why indeed? Maybe Gemma herself could enlighten us on that question.
Well, Lyney, if you're so confident in your version of events, then I think the answer should be obvious. Having killed Cesar with his own hands, Lorenzo was plagued by overwhelming guilt. Revealing the Phantom Weasel's true identity would serve no purpose. But if the Weasel remained free, then she could take care of Lorenzo's loved ones.
An excellent answer, though sadly a little dull.
Is that right? Well, don't let me bore you. If you'd care to change the topic to something more interesting, I'd be much obliged.
As a matter of fact, there's one thing I'd really like to understand. Why would the real Weasel have targeted things that only have value to other people? Could you shed any light on that?
Of course. After all, we're just telling stories here, aren't we? If I had to guess, I would say that the real Weasel must have had a terrible childhood. Left to fend for herself after her parents died young. Betrayed, scorned, beaten. She'd scrounge waste paper from garbage bins to draw on, using twigs and dirt for lack of ink and pen. She'd sew ugly rag dolls from whatever scrap material she could get her hands on. This was her only source of happiness in life. But it was all she needed, and she was content. Until once again she was betrayed. And this time everything was taken from her. She felt like life was a miry pit that dragged her further down the more she struggled to escape. At that tender age, she should have been happy. Instead, she stood in the shadows and watched with envy as all good things in the world passed her by. This was a fate too cruel for anyone to bear. Her pain became a breeding ground for dark thoughts. Thoughts which festered and grew into a twisted solution to her troubles. I detest the happiness of others, in all its forms alike. I will rob them of everything they hold to be good and true, and it will fill the void in my soul.
That's some pretty heavy stuff.
Now it all makes sense.
Does this story satisfy you, Lyney?
Yes, it is quite to my tastes. Thank you for helping to clear up my confusion.
Entonces la carta de aviso hace unos 3 días.
Huh. That's right. What drove you to write that letter, Gemma? What were you trying to achieve there? Because without that, none of this would have ever come to light.
She didn't write the letter.
After 10 long years, I'd hoped that the Phantom Weasel would be consigned to the history books by now. But it seems like someone still wasn't ready to let her finally be at peace. Lyney. Or should I call you the Phantom Copycat now? You were the one who posted that letter outside the Opera House. But why?
Very sharp, Phantom Weasel. Still as shrewd as ever. Well, no need for me to be coy about it. Our goal was to clear Caesar's name. The most straightforward way to change the public's impression of Cesar was to force the Weasel to show themselves.
That's it? You had no other agenda?
Of course we did. We made it quite clear in the letter, I believe. I shall take from you that which you hold most dear, just as you did to me 10 years ago.
10 years ago? You mean Caesar's death? You
Eran
met
sus
him?
alumnos.
Wait. Oh, I get it. You were those two obnoxious kids. It's been so long, and you're all grown up now. I didn't recognize you. He taught you magic back then, didn't he? For what, 10 days or something? And you went to all this trouble. Why?
We remember all our debts, however great or small.
Se está quedando larga esta conversación, ¿no?
10 years ago, Caesar's reputation was torn to shreds, and his legacy was thrown out. 10 years on, and no one cares what the truth is anymore. But we did not forget, and so we came to find you.
And? What exactly did you take from me? I'm still standing, as you can see. Lorenzo has admitted to everything. I'm
Free? Do you really think so? Caesar once told me that even though the world is filled with lies and falsehoods, we must find our own truth. I think that applies to you too. Truth can take many forms. Prized possessions with nostalgic value, fervent hopes and dreams, and irreplaceable people.
A ver, yo lo dije, que Lorenzo me
Life
parecía
took
muy
many
obvio.
things from you, and those wounds never healed. When they ached unbearably in the dead of night, stealing became your way of numbing the pain.
What are you trying to say?
I'm saying that for the last 10 years, you've been living a rather uneventful life. Perhaps that's because you found something other than a life of crime to fill the hole? Back to Lorenzo for a second. He murdered his own master, played along with your act, and took pains to make sure any suspicion would be directed towards him. But what did he have to gain from all that? He knew who you were and the things you'd done, and despite that, he was willing to give everything up for your sake. He's the reason that you haven't felt the compulsion to steal in all these years. You're more than just accomplices in murder. You're the only real friends each other has. So I think you know, deep down, that he is the only truth you have in your life. But that truth is gone now, and I guarantee you, you'll never see it again.
Congratulations on your freedom, Gemma.
Your freedom will cost you dearly. From now on, you'll be all alone in a world full of lies and falsehoods. I do hope you'll be able to bear it. You've still got a long life ahead of you after all.
Gather round, one and all. The time has now come for the amazing Lyney to perform his final act in tonight's show. I'm sure you're all wondering what he has planned for the grand finale. Well, wonder no more, for the answer is a death-defying high-altitude
Y ahora va a hacer el
escape.
truco del César,
A
¿no?
high altitude escape?
Igual que hace 10 años. Lo mismo que César no pudo hacer.
I'm sure you all remember the magician Cesar. This was the very trick that led to his fatal fall, after which he was dubbed the Phantom Weasel. So we have now learned that Cesar was wrongly accused, and that the real Weasel has now confessed to their crimes.
Guess that's my cue to leave.
Sí, por favor, esta conversación es
I've been
eterna.
practicing this one for ages now, but I'm still a little nervous. Traveler, Paimon, I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. There may be a lot of people watching tonight, but you alone are my true witnesses.
Lyney, wait.
No, disparen pollas.
You two hid a lot from Caesar. He went to his grave without ever knowing your secrets. So what about now? Are you an open book? You don't have to tell lies to end up isolated and alone. One day, you'll end up exactly where I am today.
You're wrong. I'm nothing like you.
So, what are we, doing now?
Like Lyney said, when you're ready, let's head outside and watch the show.
But what about Gemma?
She'll figure out what's best for her soon enough. Oh, and if you'd like to see Lyney after the show, you know where he'll be. The usual haunt.
All right. Well, let's go and watch Lenny's finale then. This trick's a pretty dangerous one, but he should be able to pull it off, right?
Vale, yo lamentablemente lo tengo que dejar aquí, ¿vale? No tengo más tiempo, es que las conversaciones están durando media vida y no tengo más tiempo. Llevo grabando desde las 4, tío. Esta misión está durando ya casi 2 horas. Entonces, lo siento mucho, voy a tener que dejarlo aquí. No sé si al siguiente episodio podré grabarlo con mi voz, pero bueno. Espero que os haya gustado, que lo hayáis disfrutado y ya, nos vemos mañana. Adiós.